Hello. Hello. Today is Monday, 20th of April. Got a few technology things to bugger around with today. Okay, we are here. Is anyone here? I don't see who's joined the feed, only if you click the like or make a comment. And some days I'm really prepared. I know exactly what I want to talk about. And there's always kind of like a dozen things I could talk about. Days like today, which come at the end of a busy client session for myself, for myself, a busy client session, and I get a bit talked out. Hello, Jane. I just saw someone make a hello. Um, then it can come as a bit of a surprise. So there are things I thought I was going to talk about. I thought I was going to talk about how the novelty has ended and we're in a new normal and those kind of things. But actually, um, you know, I thought I'd share something really personal today and see if it helps you. And it's kind of how it's helping me through this time. So the interesting thing about lockdown when it first happened, or as we headed into this time of being concerned about germs and the world becoming a dangerous place due to invisible things, and many things about our life stopping, being halted, really reminded me of back in 2013 when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I had surgery and I had, to recover from surgery. But 2, 3 weeks later, I was whacked with you're starting chemotherapy tomorrow. Just not the words that a naturopath expects to hear. So I was deeply into survival mode. And I contacted an old friend who had walked this path before with breast cancer when she was in her 30s and gone through chemo, radiotherapy, surgery, all the shaboodle. And I remember contacting her and said, "Do you have any advice for going through chemo?" And I literally opened up her email in the car park as I was heading to go up to the floor to have chemotherapy for the very first time. And what I remember from that was there were some nice, really useful tips, like if you're going with your partner or a friend, take a splitter so you can, and you in two sets of headphones so you can watch a movie or stream something together without having the sounds around you. But she threw me a challenge, which was the challenge was she said, maybe do a project through chemo. A project through chemo? I mean, I could barely walk around the block. I'd had major surgery and I was just about to get whacked around every 3 weeks by the holy concoction of poison. And her example, and once again, she was in her 30s when she first had cancer, and she was a performer, was to devise and then ultimately perform an off-Broadway show. And I remember reading that going, holy, like, I should do some major project like this. And this is what lockdown, one of the aspects of lockdown, see, first touch of the face. One of the major aspects of lockdown that seems to be going around is to do a creative project or to renovate your house or do something like that. And that advice I was given was kind of twofold. It's like kind of life goes on outside of your illness or your treatment. And in this case, life goes on outside of the restrictions of lockdown and living in interesting times. So, how about you do something useful with it? So, I think there's a lot of pressure to do that, from Marie Kondoing your entire house to writing an off Broadway one woman show. Who knows? I ultimately did not do anything that big, I thought, until I came to the other end of chemo and I had basically reduced my belongings in my house by 50% because I was moving interstate. So my major projects were moving out of my clinic that I had owned and run for 20 something years in the city, and packing that up and working out what I wanted to do with all my work possessions, and then culling my house. And it was involved going through old letters. Actually, I have one regret from that time. My one regret was I am a bit of a hoarder of ephemera and documentation, and I read a lot of letters from other people that were from the days before internet, and that's how we kept in touch. Because I'm a traveller. I moved across the world. I've moved cities many times, and I do regret now throwing out many of those letters. And I do a bit regret throwing out some of my London ephemera and ephemera from my own acting past. But it kind of felt good at the time. It was like, if I die, do I want other people to read this? And that was a pretty strong motivation for clearing out some of my stuff. So I actually inadvertently had a huge project, almost as big as an off-Broadway show. And I managed to find the energy and the time to do that because I really only had a couple of months after finishing treatment to move. So the other way that lockdown reminds me of going through chemo is this new fear for the world. The fear of the world, of contaminants. I had never experienced being immunocompromised before, so this was very, very new to me. And it turned the world at times from being benign to scary. And I know that's a phase that many of us have been through during these weeks and months. I personally have come to a place where I'm kind of used to washing my hands and pushing the pedestrian crossing with my elbow, and seeing people not socially distant seems really weird to me now, particularly when you're watching videos or films and streaming. But that amount of time at home is really what reminds me of my chemo journey. I'm so grateful that I'm having this time at home now where food still tastes delicious. I'm not nauseous. I have reasonable energy. I'm not having body aches and pains and other digestive complaints and misery, and am deeply contemplating my own survival. I know in some parts of the world, some people are deeply contemplating their survival. I know people are making a will for the first time, and I think that's something we all need to do, whether we have a life-challenging condition or we're living in a pandemic. It's a grown-up thing to do, to think about that. If you have things, journals, whatever, in your home that you wouldn't want somebody to read, then have a think about whether you want to keep them. I had a friend in New Zealand who was a great journaler, and I remember receiving a letter, so this was in the 80s or 90s, telling me that she had composted all her journals because those thoughts and emotions weren't relevant to her anymore, and she didn't want to ruminate on the past. And then composting them and turning them into nourishment to grow something new, I thought was deeply symbolic. So my lockdown experience may be different to yours because I feel incredibly grateful to be spending this time at home, but doing it because I am well and I want to stay well, not because I've had something imposed on me. I find lockdown so much easier than my previous experience of health lockdown, because the whole world, and definitely my neighbourhood and all my friends, are in exactly the same position. So we have a lot more support and bonding. No one's keeping their distance from me because they don't know what to say or what to do, or are afraid how I'm going to look and whether that would be confronting. So as odd as it sounds, my previous experience of cancer and chemotherapy has really informed me having a better lockdown so far. What about you? Has this time of unusual living making you look at your world differently or your past experiences any differently? Let me know if they do. Hope this has been illuminating rather than a downer. And I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday at 1 p.m. for something new. Maybe we'll talk about food tomorrow. Give me a hint of what you'd like me to cover. Are you getting sick of eating the same things in isolation, or are you getting really creative? I'm doing some great creative, of course, at cooking when I'm on my own at the moment. See you tomorrow. Bye.